me fix this up real quick, y'all. Hey. All right, let's hop right into it. No time to waste. Dana Bash asked Linda McMahon how eliminating Department of Education will increase test scores. That's a really good freaking question. That's a really good freaking question. How is it going to increase test scores? Eliminating the Department of Education. When I first heard that, I was like, whoa. This administration is doing a lot. Anyways, let's keep going. Let's hop right into it. No time to waste.
Another hectic week in Donald Trump's America, and the president watched the NCAA wrestling match last night. But front and center back here in Washington is the education of America's children. After President Trump made good on a long-time conservative talking point and took major steps to shutter his own Department of Education. The president said some of the duties of the Education Department, like distributing funding for students with disabilities and managing student loans, would be handled by different departments. But there are urgent questions about how those changes would happen, how they would affect students who need the help, how any of it will help turn around learning for American kids. Well, here with me exclusively is the woman winding down her own department, Education Secretary Linda McMahon. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
You know what I respect, though? They not playing home games. They come into every place to express how they feel. You got to give this administration that. They are not playing home games. They are not just going to Fox News and getting Fox News to say everything they want. They're going everywhere to explain what's going on, and I appreciate that.
There's so many concerns and questions from parents about the real consequences of all this. So let's talk about it. Hopefully we'll get some answers today. The president's executive order said that the Department of Education should begin to shutter. You all know, and you said this under oath, you can't do that without Congress changing the law. It doesn't seem like right now there are the votes to do that. So, if you can't close it down, what exactly will the Education Department be doing now?
Well, I think, first of all, thanks, Dan, for having me this morning. It's nice to start a Sunday with you.
Thank you.
I think the president was very clear. The outward-facing programs that are going to be affecting students there's not going to be any defunding for those programs. When he talked about student loans, that would be going to the Small Business Administration, and also then the programs for
the Small Business Administration. Okay, she said the Small Business Administration. So you're counting a loan as a business. That's mind-blowing, actually. So a student loan is going to be considered a business. That could be good or bad. Okay.
For students with disabilities will more than likely rest in HHS, which, by the way, is where they began. I think we're looking at putting things in different departments where they can operate very efficiently as we look at how we can shut down the Department of Education.
They not operate efficiently now?
Not as well as they should be. As a matter of fact, the president campaigned on the fact that he wanted to close down the Department of Education. And what we saw with our scores recently with the NAEP, which is our country's report card, I mean, it's unacceptable where education is in our country today. And so the Department of Education does not educate one child. It does not establish any curriculum in any states. It doesn't hire teachers. It doesn't establish programs. What it is more of a pass-through of funding, which is appropriated by Congress, by the way.
So she just contradicted 100% what the president actually said. Remember what Donald Trump said. He said, we're going to get rid of the Department of Education so now that the education can go back to the states. But she just said that the education isn't regulated by the Department of Education. It's regulated already by the states. So Trump just lied. Trump literally just lied to y'all faces. She literally just admitted it right here on CNN. He just lied. Hopefully they point that out, because that was extremely interesting what she just said. So the Department of Education does not handle education. It is not giving your children woke content. It does not handle education at all. Interesting.
And so we want to make sure that that funding continues in the departments where it needs to be, but at the same time, give states the opportunities to be innovative and creative with their teaching.
So you mentioned that there are lots of data. There's lots of data that shows that, I think, to put it mildly, education could be better in America.
Absolutely.
But you also just admitted, and it's just fact, that most of the funding, most of all of the curriculum, and everything that goes into educating our students happens on a local level. So I'm not quite sure how eliminating the Department of Education is going to make those test scores go up.
Well, a lot of the funding that goes into states now goes with a lot of red tape, a lot of strings attached to it. And so governors and state superintendents of education have said, look, if we have the funding coming in which allows us to be more creative, how can we spend that? The president believes, as I do, that the best education is that's closest to the students. And I want to look at some of the states that have been incredibly great over the last couple of years, like Louisiana. Their NAEP score showed that they had improved the most of any states. Those were programs that were put in place by the governors, by the superintendent of education, not having anything to do with the Department of Education in Washington. So what we need to do is to make sure that the funding has a clear path, the funding continues, but that the states are allowed to spend the money where they need to spend it, to hire teachers, increase their salaries, make sure that our students with special needs are taken care of. And that's what we want to make sure that happens.
So I'm confused. What does the Department of Education do? Because technically, what the administration is saying is that the Department of Education isn't really doing anything at all. But she's saying that the states cutting the Department of Education, giving it back to the states, will give the states the ability to be able to hire teachers and give them higher salaries and things like that. So is the Department of Education blocking that? I guess that's the question I have, like, in the comment section. Y'all tell me. Like, I'm not just totally against this administration. I want to know. Like, I really want to know what they're doing and why they're doing it. It may be effective. Or it may be completely fucking stupid. And what it's sounding like right now is going towards the stupid area. Like, so you're eliminating something that has nothing to do with anything, is what you guys are putting it out as. So I'm going to study what the department. That's my next Department of Education. What does it do? I'm curious. I gotta know.
I just want to ask a sort of a fundamental philosophical question, and that is, do you believe that the federal government has a responsibility to ensure that all children, rural children, urban, rich, poor, special needs, have access to quality education?
That is certainly the goal of the president. He has said that he wants to make sure that there is equal access to quality education for every student in our country, which is why he is such a proponent of school choice. He doesn't believe that any child should be trapped in a failing school, that we should have parents have the ability to choose where their children can be able to go to school, so that if they are in a failing school, they have an opportunity to have better education somewhere else, that they have the tools to be able to do that.
But if I may, it's a goal of the president. But is it a federal responsibility to ensure that every child in America has access to a good education?
I think that was the purpose of public education when we first began it in our country. And I think that the federal government, state governments, we owe it to all of our children. After all, that's the next generation of our engineers, our scientists, our quantum mathematicians, but also our welders, our plumbers, our HVACs, our welders, all of that. We have to make sure that there's educational opportunity available to every single student so they can be the best they can be. That's how we compete in the world.
You mentioned students with disabilities. Of course, currently your department enforces the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which does guarantee, it's a federal guarantee for free public education for children with disabilities. Can you guarantee to those parents and those students that there won't be any disruption with their education and the guarantees for their education?
I certainly hope. I would like to see even more funding go to the states for that. And if it rests with HHS, which is one of the suggestions, that funding clearly is going to continue to come from Congress. And we want to make sure that those students do have those special services and those needs which they have, which is really monitored and taken care of at the state level.
So
So if it's all, I have so many questions, and she didn't answer the question. Is it going to affect those students? That's the question that she asked you. I would grill into these people. Anytime I got the opportunity to talk to anybody from the Trump administration, Obama, Bush, I should be the one standing up there talking. Y'all would hate me because I would ask. I would go in depth. Like, explain. Is it going to affect these students? There are students that need this money. And we know that it comes from the Department of Education. You dismantled the Department of Education. So is that money going to be relegated back to the students? Yes or no?
Funding, but I'm not hearing so far any federal promise from you, who is still in charge of federal education policy and the laws passed by Congress that you are still in charge of to protect children who need it, that those protections are still going to be there and that they won't be disrupted.
They're not going to be disrupted. And it really does rest from the federal level on the funding. So the funding is appropriated by Congress. It flows through to the states. But am I, the Secretary of Education sitting in Washington, going to have a view into a schoolroom where a teacher is trying to take care of a student with special needs? Or is that going to happen better at the local level where that teacher, in cooperation with the parents and the local school officials, has more opportunity to make sure that that student's needs are taken care of? That's where it needs to lie. Well, but if they don't have the funding, if they don't have the support from Congress to continue to appropriate that money, then that's where the students can really, fall through the cracks.
Okay, so let's talk about funding.
I'm so confused. What does the Department of Education do then? Because she's saying it already happens at the local level. So what was Trump talking about when he said he's passing this back to the states? If it's already happening at the local level, then the Department of Education isn't needed. But it's saying that these things specifically that this money comes from the Department of Education. They're saying it doesn't. It already goes to the states through Congress. This is extremely confusing. I don't know. This is extremely confusing. For those of you who aren't as confused as me, the question is, what was the either on both sides? What was the point of the Department of Education, or if the Department of Education is doing everything that we think it's actually doing, helping disabled students, helping disabled students. I gotta look up everything it does, but I know helping disabled students was one of the things I was seeing, like, because I know what it does. I got a track record on my mind right now. But anyways, if we think the Department of Education is doing what it needs to do, right? Why dismantle it, or why was it even up in the first place? I guess that's the question. And I guess Trump did a good thing. If there's no reason for it to be up, then it definitely does need to be dismantled. But why was it up in the first place? What was it dealing with? Like, I'm confused.
A lot of Republicans, including many state officials, education officials in particular, who want you to change Title I grants for students in low-income or low-performing areas into what's known as block grants, which is just a lump sum of money with no strings attached. Now, there are some advocates, some experts who think that
I have an itch in my throat that I cannot scratch, or can I? Claritin liquid is powerful allergy relief that is
no strings attached concept will mean that the money won't get to those who need it. It could end up with also larger class sizes, fewer after-school programs, fewer resources. How do you do a block? And first of all, I guess the question is, do you want to do that block grant?
That's one of the suggestions, and as I've talked to governors around the country, many governors.
Well, before she goes on, I want to make this clear. I do know that the Department of Education relegates money into specific areas in order to help specific groups of people, low-income people. The Department of Education deals with student loans, like the Title I grant, those kind of things like that. Dismantling it completely eliminates those programs. So I'm curious on, like, passing it back to the states. What is that going to do in specific states where certain states don't want to give kids this type of thing, like these type of grants, or what's going to happen? Like, I'm just curious to know. Like, there's so many questions, man. I'm not going to get all my answers, but you guys probably can answer in the comment section.
Youngkin in Virginia. Virginia, who said, clearly, I think that we have eyes on the education in our states, and if we have the funding, that we know how to spend it, where to spend it, without the government trying to say from their bureaucratic perch in Washington, this is where you should be spending that money, and Governor Youngkin or other governors could say, no, but if I take that money and I spend it in this district, or I spend it over here for teacher salaries, or I spend it here, I'm going to raise the level of education in my state. I'm the one with the bird's eye view, and I'm the one with the accountability.
How do you, on the one hand, say that the federal government is still in the business of, which is still the law, protecting those students with disabilities, for example, and then send money without any guarantee that that's where the federal taxpayer dollars will go?
Oh, well, let's make
100%.
sure that we're understanding. When you're talking about Title I,
No, hold on. Before she goes on, remember, they're trying to get rid of the thing that's regulating where this money is going, is basically what she's trying to say. That the state should have complete authority over that. How can you be sure that that money is going to go where it needs to go? It's a good question.
versus IDEA money, which is the money that is being passed by Congress for students with disabilities. That will go for that purpose.
That won't be block granted.
That's not going to be block granted in with Title I money. Now, that's separate money that would go, because they would clearly have that responsibility to make sure that money does get to those students.
I mean, that's an important distinction.
Oh, it's a
And
very
I don't
important
think that was clear to people.
That's a very important distinction.
Just on the idea of Congress, you mentioned this, that the president wants to move the student loan program to the Small Business Administration, which you were in charge of in the
Yes.
last Trump term, and then move others to HHS. Why do you think President Trump has the legal authority to do that when these programs are inside your department through a law of Congress?
Well, certainly President Trump has said he will move things in accordance with the law and in cooperation with Congress. He certainly knows that if there are statutes or laws that are governing where they need to be, we'll have to abide by the law.
One real-time.
Interesting. It sounds like this administration is becoming somewhat of a dictatorship. I don't know, man. This is getting a little weird. It's getting a little crazy. It's really confusing. We all need clarity, man. We don't have clarity on tariffs. We don't have clarity on the Department of Education. You guys are dismantling things and rolling back on things that don't make any sense. It's extremely confusing. But we'll get answers probably in the upcoming days, y'all. But hey, peace. Fuck, I actually did it again. Oh.